Shakespeare was writing and the King's Men were playing, the texts that they performed, the prompt book was guarded, like with swords, because if you had a hit play, it would be these people's livelihoods. So the entire script wasn't assembled in any way except for the prompt book, and that prompt book was guarded. Everybody else would get sides. There were actually a couple different versions of Hamlet. There's one version, a foul version of Hamlet, that was supposedly lost. The version that we perform today was the second version. But there was also another version that another company, sent 2 or 3 guys in to watch the play, and they left the play and went down and wrote out everything that they remembered. That was a pretty common practice. If there was a hit play that one company had, the other company would send in their actors and they would remember everything that they could, bring that out and put up their own version of the play. There's no copyright law or anything.
We don't have any original text from Shakespeare that he had actually penned himself. They all came later, years after his death, in the form of the first folio. And then we have the quarto and the second quarto, and so on and so forth.
There are a couple different versions of the quartos, a couple different versions of the folios. Every single one is different. Presumably they were printed from the prompt book, but maybe one of them was, but they're all so different, from words to punctuation to everything. So you can't really ever be sure exactly what Shakespeare wrote. None of his foul papers, which are what he actually wrote out, none of those foul papers exist. Fair papers, I'm not sure. None of the prompt books have survived.
There's always arguments about who wrote Shakespeare's work. There's Edward de Vere's, there's from Edward to the Queen of England at the time, and everybody else in between. I like to believe that he wrote them. I like to believe that this farm boy from Stratford-upon-Avon decided that he would just try writing plays and created a canon of work that still lasts for, generations upon generations.
A lot of times with Shakespeare, people come in and they're doing like some of my actors were like, our Rosencrantz Guildenstern, we want to come in with a 6-pack of beer. It's a great idea, but too often than not, Shakespeare is just different costumes and different props. Now we're carrying rifles and we're carrying beer, as opposed to a flagon of wine and a spear. Right. I mean, there's no difference, whereas I want to make, stylistically, we're going for something that's very different as in terms of theatrical form. They're barely carrying ring props at all.
When I was in college, one of my favorite books was a book called The Empty Space by Peter Brook. And he talked about the deadly theater. The deadly theater is theater that does not continue to thrive and to live, and it exists not in a space, but in works that are not recreating or reinventing the art form, that are not pushing boundaries, that are not moving forward but are staying stagnant. And he says that within Shakespeare, the deadly theater thrives the most, because so often it does not continue to progress, to move forward, to grow and breathe as theater, as a living art form is. And that's something that's always stuck with me for a long time. And it's not that Shakespeare is deadly theater, but that it can quickly become that. And what we're searching for is not the most clean, polished production that you're going to find, but something that is living and breathing and healthy and alive. You're up against such great odds every time you take on a play of this nature that people come to expect certain things. And they're all coming expecting not to like it or not to see what they expected to see.
It's a very industrial design show. The concept is very technologically based, obviously with all the television sets and whatnot. There's going to be wires hanging down, like the grid we're not even really taking all the cables up. We're actually letting a bunch of the cables dangle down. So there is a feeling of electricity. There's an energy that's driving through the entire set.
I mean, all of it works in tandem, from the original concept to the media to the set, the lights, and the performers, and how we create the structure of this world. Very strict and very isolated, very cold, very metallic, very electronic. The words I've used in sound meetings have been crystallized almost.
I don't know, but I was reading in the Bloom book about, he talks about Hamlet as this very lifelike character, and the rest of the characters of the world is very, very archaic, very rigid, very flat. They go about their business and that's all they do. They have one-track mind and a one-track world. And then you have Hamlet who just kind of floats around. And honestly, Guthrie's doing that. It's just kind of, he's just everywhere.
We're dismantling the world of play and the world of Hamlet, and through that is where you've got these very complex and meticulously laid out TV sets and platforms and broken lighting, so to speak.
There is definitely an id platform. There is definitely an ego platform. There is definitely a super ego platform. That leaves the rest of it indecision and doubt. It's cool to be able to anchor those ideas, when you're dealing with whether or not you exist or not, to have a whole alley system to wander through. When you're really chewing on one specific idea, to have one platform that you go to, one place in the space that you go to sit and chew that idea. That's pretty helpful.
The images that you're going to see from the set is very, like I said, very industrial. You're going to see very sharp, drastic, chaotic, to an extent, very dangerous edges and lines and shapes, and there's going to be a very definitive distance between what's light and what's dark. Some really good shadow work inside of the characters that are on stage, so you never really see the fullness of what's happening. It's going to be very, very sharp, very contrasting.
What would your graces fit here?
The media thing has been always kind of on the tip of the brain, and it's wherever it can work within whatever shows we're doing. When looking at adapting any classic, it's one of the first things that kind of pops to my mind. We started in late September filming these things, and so it's been interesting to play with a lot of very theater-oriented actors in a very cinematic style of process where you're saying, make a choice now.
As an actor, there are huge challenges. First of all, dealing with choices that you made 4 months ago. Even if I had made those choices 2 days ago, watching myself on film, I'd probably still be annoyed with them and be like, God, what are you doing? Oh, you're lying. I can tell you're lying. So that's just me as an actor. For Hamlet, it's not necessarily his world has been technologically invaded. It's that the technology and the video and the media allows you to really peel back Hamlet's skull and look inside. Anytime he's actually talking to himself, I have the luxury of turning to one of the TVs and saying, help me, TV. Help me think about this. What are you thinking? And the TV will look back at me and say, I don't know, frailty. Name is a woman. I'm like, yes, that's absolutely right. And I can bounce that off myself. It's like having myself on stage to talk to, which is at once a blessing and a curse.